Hello and welcome to my video essay. My name is Kyle, and in this video essay I'll be backing up a couple of points that I have made about the scared emotion and what gives us this reaction when playing a game. I'll be using primary research with such things as surveys and secondary research with such things of websites to back up my statements, as well as explaining the colour theory behind games and why they are used, and then to finally conclude I will create an evaluation and a conclusion to round up my whole idea of these points. The first thing I think of when being scared in a game is how the game makes it occur and what makes us like this. The first thing I want to point out is the atmosphere in the games. A game with a dark, gloomy atmosphere really brings off the whole spookiness and a feel of something is around us, which really brings us on our toes. Another point I want to bring out is the fog. The fog is a big part in horror games as it really limits us to what we can see. This makes the player on edge at all times, as they are always wanting to know what will be creeping in the distance. The other point I want to bring up is sounds. Without sounds in the game, the horror feel wouldn't really have a great effect. With such things of screams and ambience, it really brings the whole game to life. This brings me on to my primary research to back my points up. I created a survey to ask people some questions about what makes them scared in games. I got a few responses, and here they are. A few of them were talking about the atmosphere in games, such as the visuals and SFX, and more points of a scary atmosphere. To show more evidence, I wanted to ask more to see if I could see if I would receive similar responses. So, with a second question of what do games use to give the feel of being scared, I managed to get some answers to back up my points even more. In the list, you can see that there are some similar answers, such as sounds. The two responses really show their statements of how games give off the scared feel, which backs up my points of sounds. To move on, I started looking for some secondary research about how games give off this feel of being scared. This will help back up my points further from other people's sources. I found this source online called the SYFY Wire. This site is for those that want to express their thoughts to others out there. In this source, I managed to find some answers relating to my points. On here, they go on to saying about how any sounds can control the mood and ambience of a game, and how sounds is the real deciding factor to true fear. They talk about how just imagining what something may look like just by hearing it is true fear, which goes on to my point of how such things of sounds can create fear. Moving on, I wanted to give off another point about colours. The colours in a game really have meanings and importance to them. What I mean by this is when you look at a horror game, for example, you'll picture a dark atmosphere and sometimes red. These colours can symbolise danger. I decided to look into colours in games myself, so I started looking at some horror games I own, and I really looked deeply at what colours were used to horror games as they symbolise fear and danger. They use reds as signs of danger, with such things for blood and marks on walls. They use blacks for their atmosphere to give off that spooky vibe in the woods to put the player right on the edge. With these points in mind, I wanted to find some more evidence to back my points up further, so I started looking into colour theory, which is a major part in the games industry, as this really breaks down the games with just colours. So I started looking online for some colour theories in games and what meanings they have. I managed to find a website called The Science of Horror, and this site is someone who goes over what colours mean in horror games. They go on to saying how different colours have different emotional responses, such as reds, blacks and greys, that tend to give you the creeps and get you pumped and ready for what is waiting. In this theory, the person goes on to talking and comparing different horror games with what colours are used and why. The game's examples are Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill Homecoming, as these two games are from the same series and have a great horror aspects to them. They go on to talking about Silent Hill 2 and what colours were used, such as reds, blacks, browns and greys. They mention how these colours were used masterfully, as it shows off the town rotting away but alive at the same time, and gives off that feel that you are walking inside a giant monster. As this effect is great, they also believe that these colours serve the purpose of frightening the player. This brings me back to my point of how colours are greatly important in games. Without them, then the games wouldn't really have any meanings to them. So these colours, they really give off that illusion of you being there, and really brings the fear to life. Finally, the first thing I want to mention is the references I used to help with my points. These sources really helped me give off some great evidence. So the first one being my own survey being created on Google Forms, giving myself some responses. Then on to the next point, which is the SYFY Wire website, which is which was a great site to use to help me cover sounds and how they are important in a game. Moving on to my research in games, I managed to look on Steam to find horror games as examples to use as my own source in research, and to finally follow that up with a website, The Science of Horror, to cover me up with colours in games and how they affect the moods. All of them sources what I used as references to help with my primary and secondary research. Overall, I want to take a look back at my points and my sources to back each one up. With my points, I really wanted to give more detailed explanations to them, as I didn't really think that there were enough reasonings behind them. An example I want to take a look at is the colour theory point. Although this point does give off some reasonings of why colours are important in games, I just wish I put more time into explaining my reasons for this. For example, I mentioned that the reds and blacks can symbolise danger, but I didn't really explain why they did. With them points in mind, I want to talk about my primary research. Overall, I think my primary research could have been so much better. The reason I say this is at the beginning of my thoughts, I mentioned about a survey I created to get answers, which I found great, but I didn't go big enough with it. What I mean is that I really didn't ask enough questions to get what I wanted, and I didn't find any other paths to go down with my primary research. However, the secondary research I really thought was great, as all my points in my mind, I managed to find some sources online to really back them up. With that in mind, I do want to say how, yes, I got evidence of points and theories to back me up, but I didn't really choose a great variety to switch things up and give me more freedom with things, as all my backed up theories were from websites only. To change that in the near future, I will try to look into different sources rather than just websites, maybe such things as articles or magazines to help me with a wide variety. To bring this further, I want to talk about my research in this theory. Although I think I did a good job at it, I don't think I had enough planning on this to give across more points and theories. To stop this from happening next time, I'll try to give myself more time on the research side to really make sure I put in enough sources and points to produce the best I can. But overall, I'm happy with this, as I gave some valid points and really managed to find evidence and theories that went along with them. So with that concluded, thank you very much for listening to my video essay.